Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. Today we're having a relaxed chat about World of Warcraft Midnight, the next WoW expansion. And I want to tackle a burning question. Is this expansion actually made for classic WoW players? As a longtime WoW fan and a classic enthusiast myself, I've been digging through all the Midnight news and rumors. There's a lot of buzz that Blizzard might be trying to bridge the gap between the modern game and those of us who love the old school Xal'atath. Heck, even some classic diehards are incredibly hyped right now. So grab a drink, get comfy, and let's talk about what Midnight is bringing to the table in plain English and whether it hits that nostalgic sweet spot. No corporate speak, no dopamine dump, just the cool stuff that matters. Before we dive in, quick roadmap. I'll go over the big features from class changes and talent revamps, to the new zones, dungeons, PvP tweaks, and even player housing, and sprinkle in some personal thoughts along the way. We'll also take a moment to ask the big question head on. Is this expansion for classic players or not really? I promise to give an honest take on both sides. Alright, let's get into it. Classes and talents overhauled. One of the first things to catch my eye is the massive shakeup to classes and talents in Midnight. Blizzard is basically reworking all 38 plus specs in the game to make them more approachable and intuitive. If you haven't played retail in a while, or ever, don't panic. This expansion is trying to trim the fat from classes. The devs said they're reducing needless complexity, focusing each spec on its core fantasy, and cutting down the crazy buff/debuff juggling so you can actually tell what's going on. In other words, it shouldn't feel like you need a doctorate in theory crafting or a suite of add-ons just to do your rotation. As a classic player, that sounds pretty appealing. Classic was never easy, but it was straightforward in a way you could grasp your class without 50 flashing buttons on your screen. Midnight's approach might bring a bit of that simplicity back, while still keeping the fun gameplay depth. On top of that, we're getting a level cap increase to 90, up from 80 in Dragonflight, with expanded talent trees and new Apex talent points to spend at the top end. Think of Apex talents like big capstone abilities or passives that truly define your build. Sounds exciting without being overwhelming. They're also introducing hero talents, which might be extra powerful choices as you level through the 80s. The vibe I'm getting is Midnight wants progression to feel meaningful. New talents, but not convoluted. And here's a cool surprise. Demon Hunters are getting a third spec called Devour. Yup, Demon Hunters finally expand beyond 2 specs. Devour spec lets you harness void magic and even fight at range. Basically, edgy Demon Hunter meets Dark Void Elf vibes. Very different and should be fun for players who always wanted a ranged DPS Demon Hunter. Oh, and speaking of Void Elves, they'll even be allowed to roll Demon Hunter now since lore-wise it ties in. We also get a new allied race, the Heroneer, unlocked through a quest chain. The Heroneer can join either faction and pick a ton of classes. We're talking Druid, Shaman, Rogue, etc. Basically all the classics. We don't know much about their backstory yet, but it's always nice to have a new playable race to spice things up. Overall, the class and talent changes feel like Blizzard extending an olive branch to lapsed players. It's like they're saying, hey, remember how fun your class was back in the day? We're trying to recapture some of that, come give it a shot. Simplified buffs, clearer rotations, less cognitive load. As the devs put it, so you're not staring at 10 overlapping cooldown timers. For me, that's huge. It means I can jump into a spec I haven't touched in years and not feel completely lost. If you've been avoiding retail because it felt too bloated or fast-paced, Midnight might be the expansion where the learning curve smooths out a bit. They're even doing a stat squish again, slicing down those massive damage and health numbers to more reasonable figures. So if you log in and your character's stats look smaller, don't worry, everyone got squished evenly. It's purely to keep numbers from exploding into the millions and make the game easier to tune, and perhaps less daunting for new or returning players. Smaller numbers might subconsciously remind us of the old days too. New or old zones and nostalgia. Alright, let's talk world content, the new zones. This is where Midnight goes heavy on nostalgia. The expansion is taking us back to Quel'Thalas, the homeland of the Blood Elves. Yes, Silvermoon City and its surrounding areas are finally getting some love again. In fact, Silvermoon is going to be our main hub city in Midnight, and it's been completely rebuilt and updated. The city is no longer just a horde-only ghost town. About 2/3 of Silvermoon will be accessible to both factions, with one section still horde exclusive. Apparently, the devs tidied up the place. The Scourge invasion damage from way back when is mostly cleaned up, and Silvermoon's looking shiny and new, with an HD makeover no doubt. For a classic fan, the idea of Alliance players strolling through Silvermoon alongside Horde is kinda mind-blowing, but also pretty cool. It feels like a nod to Warcraft's history, acknowledging that by 2026 these old rival cities can evolve. The broader region of Eversong Woods and Ghostlands is also getting a major revamp. They've basically healed the Ghostlands. Remember the Dead Scar and all those gloomy blue forests from Burning Crusade? Lore-wise, that area has been rejuvenated. In Midnight, Eversong and Ghostlands are merged into one huge zone. They call it Xal'atath Zone, and the Dead Scar is pretty much healed over, so it's a Ghostlands 2.0, same land, but teeming with life again instead of permanent undead spooky vibes. There will still be some darker pockets. They haven't totally erased the spooky atmosphere, but overall expect a more vibrant Northern Lord Eran. Some folks will miss the eerie fell green crystals and haunted woods of old, but personally I can't wait to see the glow up. It's like visiting an old neighborhood that finally got cleaned up after 15 years. Now Xal'atath is just one of 4 new zones in Midnight. The others include Quel'Danas, yep, the Isle of Quel'Danas where the Sunwell is, and likely new adjacent areas we haven't explored before. From hints, we might get to venture into Zul'Aman, to Troll territory, or other parts of the north that were previously just blank map edges. Actually, there's word that Zul'Aman is being reworked, possibly as a new questing area or dungeon. The theme of the expansion story is an invasion of the Void. We've got the old god's artifact Xal'atath stirring up trouble, and a big void storm looming, so one of the new zones might even be some kind of void-touched realm or a twisting nether location. But the key takeaway? Midnight isn't whisking us off to some entirely alien world. It's bringing us back to classic Azeroth locations with a fresh twist. For a veteran player that's hype, seeing Silvermoon and Sunwell in modern graphics, with new quests and stories, hits me right in the nostalgia. It's the kind of setting that classic players know and love, rather than another completely new continent with no connection to the Warcraft 3 era lore. Dungeons and raids. What about the endgame PvE stuff? Midnight will launch with plenty of instance content to keep us busy. We're getting 8 new dungeons out of the gate, each with its own environment and storyline. A few names have been teased, like a dungeon set in Windrunner's Spire, which was Sylvanas' old haunt in Ghostlands, and another possibly in Murder Row, a notorious alley in Silvermoon. If you remember questing in the Ghostlands or Silvermoon City back in Burning Crusade, these locations are going to ring a bell. It's super cool that they're turning those lore-rich spots into dungeons. It's like Blizzard is mining the classic era zones for new adventures. On the raiding side, Midnight isn't going overboard with dozens of bosses, but we'll have 3 new raids in Season 1, featuring a total of 9 bosses split across them. That's a pretty standard amount, possibly meaning 1 larger raid and 2 smaller ones. One raid clearly involves Quel'Danas, the Sunwell Isle. There's a scenario called March on Quel'Danas where we likely defend the Sunwell from void incursions. They even let alpha testers fight one boss named Beloren. Child of Alar sounds like a phoenix offspring. Is a test encounter. Another raid might involve Zul'Aman or something with the Amani trolls, given the location, or perhaps delving into the void itself. And who knows, maybe one raid takes place inside Silvermoon City or the Sunwell Plateau with a twist. The idea of raiding in updated TBC era locations has me pretty excited. It's familiar yet new. For those who enjoy smaller group content, there's also a new feature called Delves. These are like mini dungeons or scenarios. Midnight is adding 10 delves plus 1 Nemesis delve, which I assume is a super challenging one. You even get a famous NPC companion for these. Valera Sanguinar, the blood elf rogue from Warcraft lore, will join you in delves to plunder treasure and take on challenges. It reminds me a bit of classic Chromie scenarios or Torghast from Shadowlands, but presumably more bite-sized and lore-focused. We'll have to see how those play out, but extra content besides dungeons raids is always welcome. Classic players often like the journey and exploration, so having some side adventures with a lore character could be a nice touch. Overall, whether you're into 5-mans or 20-man content, Midnight has you covered. New dungeons, nostalgic raid settings, and even those delves for some casual fun. Importantly, I haven't seen any mention of a borrowed power grind tied to dungeons or raids. It looks like we're back to a straightforward loop. Do content, get gear and cosmetics. No Azerite armor, no covenants, etc. And that is very appealing if you hated those systems. It's more like Burning Crusade or Wrath days. You know, gear, boss kills, repeat, simple and satisfying. PvP updates. Alright PvPers, Midnight has a few goodies for you too. First off, there's a brand new epic battleground on the way, Slayer's Rise. This is a 40 vs 40 battleground set amid a raging void storm. From the description, it sounds almost like the old school Alterac Valley scale. Huge battles with tons of players. Horde and Alliance will be racing for objectives in a chaotic void touch battlefield. And get this, if you're in war mode out in the corresponding outdoor zone, you can actually spill into world PvP around that area. That means organic PvP skirmishes could happen around the battleground zone entrance, bringing back some of that open world PvP madness we remember from Torren Mill vs South Shore days. Well, one can hope. Having a massive 40-40 fight feels very classic in spirit. Big battles, less scripted than the small 10-10 or 15-15 maps. I'm definitely eager to check that out and see if it recaptures some old AV vibes. The devs are also introducing training grounds for PvP, essentially a tutorial mode or safe environment for new PvPers to learn the ropes before jumping into real matches. That's great news if you've been mainly a PvE or classic player and feel intimidated by modern PvP. You can practice basics and not get jibbed instantly by some gladiator level rogue. It shows they want more people to dip their toes into PvP without fear, which is smart. Now, one change that caught my attention. They are tweaking crowd control in PvP to make it less frustrating. Currently in WoW, there's diminishing returns on repeated stuns or CC chains. In Midnight, they're making it so that after 2 back-to-back stuns or fears, etc., the target becomes immune. It used to be 3 applications before immunity, so this is a notable change. Basically, no more being chain CC'd to oblivion by a lineup of rogues and mages beyond 2 cycles. This should reduce those I can't place my character moments, and give everyone a fighting chance to respond in PvP. As a casual, I'm all for it. I remember being perma-sheeped or stunned in battlegrounds, and man, that's frustrating. 2 and you're out sounds like a good balance between allowing tactical CC and preventing outright cheese. Beyond that, expect the usual PvP season reset with new ratings, rewards, probably some new PvP gear cosmetics, and class tuning for PvP specific balance. But the key takeaway for classic-minded folks, PvP in Midnight is aiming to be more accessible with training mode. Less cheesy, no infinite stun locks, and bringing back epic scale battles. If you fondly remember huge battles in vanilla AVs or world PvP raids, this might scratch that itch. Okay, saving one of the biggest features for last, player housing. Yes, World of Warcraft is finally getting a housing system in Midnight, and this is a huge deal. Players have been requesting housing for literally decades. Now it's actually happening, and it looks pretty robust. So what can we do? Basically, you'll be able to build, decorate and personalize your own home in Azeroth. You start with a house in one of several zones. I assume new zones like Quel'Thalas, maybe others. And you can join a neighborhood, which is like a community housing district. This can be your guild or just a bunch of friends deciding to live in the same area. They even have neighborhood endeavors, which are group tasks for your community that unlock rewards or bring NPC visitors to your town. It sounds like a mix of Animal Crossing and, well, Warcraft. Customization is huge here. You'll collect tons of decorations for your house, interior and exterior. Blizzard says decor items will come from all sorts of gameplay. Buying from vendors, crafting with professions, achievement rewards, quest loot, you name it. Practically anything you do in Midnight could drop a cool chair, a painting, a statue, etc. for your home. They're even enabling outdoor decorations and exterior customization, so you're not limited to just decorating rooms inside. Want to change your roof style or put up a backyard shrine? That's on the menu. You can also move your house to a different zone if you eventually want a change of scenery. And of course, you can invite friends over, visit each other's homes and show off your epic collection of mementos and trophies. It's honestly sounding like one of the most in-depth housing systems in any MMO if they pull it off. Now, why is this a big deal for classic players? Well, player housing is a very old school MMO feature. Games like Ultima Online, RuneScape, EverQuest 2, many classics had housing or strong social spaces. WoW never did. Garrisons don't count, those were more like personal instanced zones with no customization. For those of us who enjoy the RPG aspect, housing is a dream come true. You can finally kind of live in Azeroth. Not just treat it as a series of raid portals, it encourages exploration, to find decor, maybe even roleplay for those inclined, and it gives max level players something to do other than grind gear. I've seen classic community folks really excited about housing. It's the kind of chill, community-driven content that resonates with how we used to play, just hanging out in Ironforge or Orgrimmar showing off stuff. Now you can hang out in your own house and invite guildies over for screenshot parties. One Reddit comment I saw put it well. Housing is by far the biggest new feature. The rest of Midnight is just more WoW. So if building and decorating a home doesn't appeal to you, then Midnight might feel like just another expansion with the usual new zones, raids, etc. But if you're into the idea, it's a game changer. I suspect a lot of classic-minded players will love this, because it's something you can invest time in at your own pace, with zero meta pressure. Also cool. Early housing access is a pre-order perk. If you pre-purchase Midnight, you actually get to start building and decorating your house before the expansion launches. Kind of like a head start to make your crib ready for when friends come visit at launch. Is this expansion for classic players? Alright, moment of truth. Let's pause and ask the big question directly. Is World of Warcraft Midnight really aimed at classic WoW players? Or in other words, if you've been living in WoW Classic, be it vanilla, TBC, Wrath, and generally prefer that experience, is Midnight the thing that will bring you over to retail? On one hand, yes, it really seems so. Blizzard is clearly trying to court the classic crowd in a few ways. The class and talent changes feel like a step back from the super arcadey complexity retail had become, moving towards something easier to grasp and more thematic. That's a big plus for those who quit retail, because it was too much going on. In fact, some players have joked that retail WoW is basically turning into Classic Plus at this point with all these changes, bridging the best of both worlds. The setting of the expansion is deeply rooted in early WoW lore. Silvermoon, Quel'Thalas, Trolls, the Sunwell, these are things Classic and TBC veterans care about. It's not another planet or dragon dimension, it's Azeroth's past coming alive again. That's a smart way to get the Warcraft 3 generation interested. Housing is another subtle nod. It brings a very community-centric MMO-ish feature that harks back to the social focus of Classic. Even the PvP 40 vs 40 battleground is like a love letter to old AV battles. And hey, they brought back Chris Metzen as a creative director for the story, the guy who originally crafted a lot of Warcraft's lore. That alone has many old school fans excited, thinking the storytelling might return to its former glory. Or at least its old themes. We even see posts from Classic players on forums saying, "I'm a Classic first player and I'm incredibly hyped for Midnight." There's definitely something in the air with this expansion that makes it feel like a welcome home sign for lapsed veterans. But on the other hand, we have to be real. Midnight is still retail WoW. It's part of the modern game, which means a lot of differences from Classic WoW remain. The pacing, for example, you're going to level from 80 to 90 relatively quickly. It's not the slow crawl of Classic leveling with weapon skills and training ranks and whatnot. The world is also different. Conveniences like group finder, fast travel, and so on will all be there. Some Classic fans might find Midnight too easy or streamlined in some aspects. Yes, classes are being simplified a bit, but you're still getting new fancy systems like Apex talents, Hero talents. It's not literally the 2004 talent trees. The combat will still have that fluid, faster feel of modern WoW, which some love, but some Classic Andies might not. Also, if someone's main gripe with retail was story or theme, like the cosmic stuff or faction piece, etc., Midnight does dive into Void Lords and such. It's not purely a gritty Azeroth war story. It's likely continuing the big cosmic narrative, Void versus Light, albeit grounded in familiar locations. Some Classic folks might shrug at that and say, "I prefer the simple Horde versus Alliance and Scourge storylines." There's also the progression reset and features bloat that come with any new expansion. One comment I saw said they can't get into retail because It's just too much stuff, too bloated, compared to Classic. Even if Midnight streamlines things, retail WoW still has like 18 years of mounts, transmog, achievements, collectibles, and systems layered on top. Jumping into that world can feel overwhelming if you're used to the comparatively minimalistic Classic environment. Blizzard is aware of this. They added a new returning player intro experience in Midnight to ease people in without dumping all past content at once. That will help, but it won't magically erase all the legacy content. Some players just might not want to deal with the modern MMO trappings, no matter how good Midnight is. In essence, Midnight looks like the closest thing to a Classic-friendly expansions we've ever had. It checks a lot of boxes that might entice a Classic player to try it. Familiar lore, more straightforward gameplay, community features, and no bizarre borrowed power grind. But it won't be Classic WoW 2.0. It's still the current game with all that entails. If you truly only love the old school systems and the slower pace of Classic, Midnight may not fully scratch that itch. It might come close though, and it could be a great middle ground for those who enjoy both or are open-minded. For me, I see Midnight as an opportunity, maybe even a bridge, to enjoy new content that respects my nostalgia. I'm excited about it, but I also know it won't replace the feeling of Classic entirely, and that's okay. Final thoughts. To wrap things up, I've gotta say I'm personally excited for Midnight. Blizzard seems to be pouring a lot of heart into this one, and it shows. We've got the old world coming back to life in high fidelity. We've got classes being modernized in a way that hopefully captures the fun without the fluff. And we finally get to live in Azeroth with our own homes. It's like they took a bunch of long-standing player wishes and said, "Alright, let's do as many as we can in one expansion." As a fan, I really appreciate that. Whether you're a Classic loyalist or a retail regular or somewhere in between, Midnight is at least worth keeping an eye on. It might be the expansion that convinces a few friends of mine who swore off retail to give it one more go. I mean, worst case, you hop in, level through Silvermoon for the nostalgia, decorate a cozy house by the Ghostlands, and if it's not for you, no harm done. Best case, we all get an expansion that combines the best of Classic feel with modern polish. I'll be honest, I haven't been this hyped for a WoW expansion launch in a long time. Maybe it's the medicine factor, maybe it's the Classic vibes, but something about Midnight feels like a homecoming. And I'm so ready to take up arms in Silvermoon, fight off the void, and then chill at my own little house with guildmates at the end of the day. So is Midnight truly for Classic players? The answer is partly it's for all of us who love Warcraft past and present. If you're on the fence, I say give it a shot. You might be pleasantly surprised at how much Azeroth can feel new again, yet familiar all at once. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Also leave a comment down below if you think this expansion could suit Classic players. Until the next one, take care.